Hello everybody. Next up we play host on Wednesday evening to Crystal Palace. Coverage is by virtue of something called Amazon Prime Video, which means we'll probably have to find some spotty teenager to tell us how to get that on our telly here at the Avram Grant Olympic Rest Home for the Bewildered. The geriatrics at Eyes Up Mother Brown will be doing their stuff on YouTube, presuming that there are sufficient spotty teenagers to go round to handle the TV installation. So, Palace then. A club so ashamed of its location it actually fails to mention it in its name. It is, of course, located in the London borough of Croydon, a place that spawned, and I refuse to believe that she was born, the former Mrs. Percy, and which has now added good to honest financial bankruptcy to the moral and spiritual versions that have been the place's stock in trade for decades. There's a massive hole in the local budget. Lord knows what they spent it on. Apart from a number of six-figure golden handshakes to senior executives, of course. Their football team currently sit in 11th place, with 17 points from the 12 games played so far. That's 5 places and 3 points behind us. Their 5 victories have come against Southampton and Leeds at home, 1-0 and 4-1 respectively, and away at Man United 3-1, Fulham 2-1 and West Brom 5-1. They picked up a point at home to Brighton, the one club that can be bothered to have any sort of rivalry with them, and it has to be said vice versa. The defeats have come at home to Everton, Newcastle 2-0, away at Chelsea 4-0, away at Wolves 2-0, and away at Burnley 1-0. Most recently they picked up a point against Spurs, whose get a goal on the break and park the bus tactic came a bit undone for once. As ever, Daisy, the socially distanced and bubbled personal assistant with a beautiful smile, has been running the rule over their summer/autumn signings. They didn't have an awful luck with the arrival of West Brom youngster Nathan Ferguson. Palace agreed a fee of around £11 million with the Baggies back in January, but a medical showed up a knee problem and the deal collapsed. The player's contract expired in June, whereupon he joined Palace, technically on a free transfer, although a tribunal decided compensation fee arose due to the player's youth. I've no idea how much that was. The player hasn't played a competitive match since January, and although he's now recovered from the knee problem that scuppered the original deal, he's now got a thigh strain. Quite how genuine our interest in Eberechi Eze was during the summer, Lord alone knows. Although the papers seemed to think we were sniffing around, there was little in the way of concrete evidence that was the case, suggesting that maybe someone somewhere was trying to drive up the fee. Whatever reason, Palace's original £12 million bid to QPR was eventually up to £16 million, at which point the club shook hands. It was Etze's free kick on Sunday that caused the confusion in the Spurs' defence at the weekend, causing Palace's equaliser. This prompted the Spurs club shop to start designing shell suits bearing the commemorative legend 2 weeks at the top, something they had to put on ice despite 2 more iffy penalty decisions going Liverpool's way in the later match. The arrival of right-back Nathaniel Clyne on a free from Liverpool represents something of a homecoming for the Stockwell-born former England defender, who made his original Palace debut back in 2008-09. After a few seasons with Southampton, he ended up on Merseyside, where his career was beset by injury. Back problems seeing him miss most of 2017-18. He missed all of 2019-20 with an anterior cruciate ligament injury, and having been released by Scousers at the end of his contract, he pitched up at Palace, ostensibly to join in with training to keep himself fit while looking for a new club. This arrangement then saw him registering as a trialist, allowing him to play in the under-23 matches. Eventually a new proper deal was agreed and he's now a full member of the squad. The other arrival was Jack Butland, who came in on a cut-price £1 million deal from Stoke, the fee reflecting the value to the Potters of having one of their top earners taken off the payroll. Butland has come in as cover for Spanish stopper Vicente Guaita, who had an interesting 90 minutes against Spurs, making a string of spectacular saves before and after Spurs opening the scoring, but misjudging the swerve of the Kane shot, which, although it swerved all over the place a little bit, should still have been dealt with a bit better. Enough of them. Let's move on, shall we, and have a look at the wild and wacky world of association football. I was most disturbed to see the grinning hypocrite Klopp turning up on my screen, advertising a well-known delivery company. It's a totally unrealistic portrayal, of course. In real life, you'd find him turning up 2 days late despite your having paid for express delivery. When you complained, he would blame you for having to get up early, despite the large fee you paid him to do so. Meanwhile, did anyone manage to get through the Manchester derby without nodding off? No, me neither. In fact, even thinking about it makes me a bit drowsy, sorry. Nearly went there. Where were we? Oh yes, this week's candidate for the Couldn't Make It Up awards is Dele Alli, whose appearance in FIFA's top 55 players listings is hilarious, both on the grounds that if he were in an empty room he probably wouldn't be the best player in it, and the fact that Spurs have really considered him to be in their top 18 this season. Well done FIFA, another winner. Let's move on to us then. Well, it's always good to pick up points on the road. And for those of us of a certain age who remember the gamesmanship, cheating and match fixing associated with the Leeds of the early 70s, it was extra satisfying. The penalty? Well, there you had it in a microcosm. What exactly is wrong with refereeing in this country? VAR was used to spot that Fabianski's heel had strayed, an inch off his line for the first effort? Okay, fair enough. Perhaps Oliver and whoever's in charge would care to explain why he felt unable to spot Bamford, whose encroachment for the second kick was so bad he was almost level with the taker. That's pushing 6 yards, missed by people who 1 minute earlier were patting themselves on the back for having spotted encroachment of about an inch. Oliver, best referee in the league, even if that were an accolade to be proud of rather than the shameful indictment that it actually is, it's palpably untrue. Still, our heads never went down and the 3 points were deserved. We should have put the game to bed earlier, of course. Haller's first touch for much of the game was dreadful, but even when things weren't going for him, he kept plugging, to the extent that, in the end, he was unlucky not to get on the score sheet, with Meslier reserving Haller to be on the receiving end of a few of his better saves. It was a promising full debut for Ben Rama. We haven't had much in the manner of players who can run at defenders in recent times, so that at least gave us a different option to the way we could play. Would it be mischievous of me to say that he reminded me of Dan Garner? There were a few occasions, and this goes for Bowen as well, where his choice of ball was a bit frustrating, and that will need to be worked on for both players. Now a quick word on Cresswell. Change your boot supplier, mate. How many times do we see the player lose his footing on Friday night? Back in my day, you had to look at the pitch before the game and elected to wear long studs, short studs or moulded studs, depending on conditions. I found that tended to work well for most grounds, although anyone who's ever played away at old stationers up at Barnet will remember that you were either ankle deep in mud if there'd been a hint of moisture in the air, or on a rock-hard pitch, resembling the surface of the moon. In either case, if you started falling all over the place, you swapped boots. Now, I'm not picking on Cresswell, who had a decent game when he wasn't on his backside, but he seemed more susceptible than most to the conditions. It does seem odd in an era when clubs employ all sorts of scientists, sports psychologists, nutritionists, and, for all I know, quantum physicists. Players are slipping all over the place because there's a little dew on the ground. Meanwhile, on the injury front, at the time of writing, the injury list is too deep. Having to write these things well in advance of the match meant that I'd already submitted my copy when Arthur Masuaku announced that he was going under the knife to sort out a long-standing knee problem. Let's hope that's not too much of a long-term, Antonio's hamstring is still being kept under wraps as we speak, though they will no doubt be monitoring it as the game gets nearer. Interestingly, Issa Diop was nowhere near the squad the other night, with Craig Dawson joining the bench in his place. I've not heard any explanations so far. Maybe it was thought that he might be more of a Dawson-style game, had he been required. It'll be interesting to see whether one or both are included. Prediction? Well, we're looking decent at the moment, aren't we? The only blip in our recent form was inspired by the temporary pitch extension against Manchester United. We do need to be a bit more clinical in front of goal, though. In the end, we're left with hearts in mouths as Rodrigo's header from point-blank range was collected by a grateful Fabianski. Eventually, I'll start putting away all those chances that we keep creating and someone will be in for a complete and utter tonking. Maybe not this week, though. I still think this will be our evening, however. So, with an air of confidence about the place, I'll be placing the £2.50 I was going to pay for insurance on my Amazon packages in case Klopp nicks them, on a home win. Ray, mate, please stick it on the 3-1 to us. That's when your turf accountancy premises opens in the morning. Enjoy the game, everyone.